It's winter 1941. Snow covers the Russian countryside. German panzers roll eastward, their commanders certain of victory. Suddenly, out of the blizzard, strange new shapes appear. Low, wide-tracked tanks, their armor angled like nothing the Germans had seen. Shells bounce harmlessly off their sloped sides, while the German guns struggle to punch through. One officer later wrote, "We had nothing that could stop them." This was the Soviet T-34, the tank that would shock the Wehrmacht, carry the Red Army from Moscow to Berlin, and change the face of modern warfare. This is the story of how the T-34 became the tank that won World War II. The T-34 wasn't just another tank, it was a revolution on tracks. When it appeared in 1940, it combined three elements in a way no tank before had: sloped armor, wide tracks, and a powerful gun. Instead of flat plates, its hull was angled, so enemy shells were more likely to ricochet. A 45mm plate sloped at 60 degrees could resist fire better than a much thicker flat plate. Germans quickly learned that their Panzer III and IV guns often couldn't penetrate it at all. Russia's battlefields were seas of mud and snow. German tanks, with their narrow tracks, bogged down easily. The T-34's wide treads spread its weight, letting it glide over terrain that stopped others cold. Its 76.2mm cannon outgunned almost every tank in 1941. It could destroy German panzers at ranges where their return fire was useless. To German officers used to crushing weaker machines, the first encounter with the T-34 was a nightmare. One report described it as a most formidable tank, unequaled in the world. If the T-34 had been a German design, it would have been filled with delicate parts and endless fine-tuning. But the Soviets built it with a different philosophy: simplicity. It was rugged, easy to fix, and forgiving of rough handling. A farm boy from Siberia could be taught to drive one in a week. If a tank broke down, the crew could patch it together with a wrench, a hammer, and sheer stubbornness. Compare that to the German Tiger, an engineering marvel, but requiring hours of maintenance for every few hours in battle. The T-34, by contrast, was built like a tractor. And that was no accident. Soviet engineers deliberately borrowed from tractor factories, using designs and parts meant to survive mud, dust, and freezing winters. The T-34's brilliance wasn't just on the battlefield, it was in how fast it could be built. When Germany invaded, Soviet leaders made a desperate decision: move their tank factories thousands of miles east, beyond the reach of the Luftwaffe. Whole plants, equipment, workers, even families, were loaded onto trains and shipped to the Urals. There, in open fields and half-built sheds, production restarted. Conditions were brutal. Workers labored in the freezing cold, often without enough food. Many were women and teenagers. But the tanks kept rolling out. By 1942, Soviet factories were producing more tanks than all of Germany's plants combined. At one point, a new T-34 rolled off the assembly line every hour. Mass production meant losses didn't matter as much. For every Tiger the Germans built, the Soviets could field 10 T-34s. Numbers alone didn't win battles, but when combined with a solid design, they overwhelmed the Wehrmacht. So what did this mean on the battlefield? Moscow, 1941. As winter set in, German tanks froze in the snow. T-34s, with their wide tracks and diesel engines, kept moving. In the counter-offensive, they spearheaded Soviet attacks, shocking Germans who thought the Red Army was finished. Stalingrad, 1942. In the brutal urban fighting, T-34s rumbled through rubble and streets, supporting infantry house by house. German reports noted that Soviet counterattacks always seemed to include waves of T-34s, appearing where they were least expected. Kursk, 1943, the largest tank battle in history. German Panthers and Tigers arrived, powerful but plagued with breakdowns. The Soviets fielded thousands of T-34s, swarming German spearheads, outlasting them through sheer durability and numbers. A German soldier wrote bitterly after Kursk, "They come in waves. You destroy one, 3 more appear. It is like fighting the sea." The T-34 wasn't perfect. Early models were cramped with poor visibility. Crews often fought blind, relying on instinct. Radios were scarce. Many Soviet tanks still used flags for communication in 1941. But what the T-34 gave its crews was confidence. Soldiers trusted their machines to start in freezing mornings, to plow through mud, to take hits, and keep moving. Training was fast and sometimes brutal, but the simplicity of the tank meant a new recruit could contribute quickly. Where a Tiger needed a highly skilled crew to survive, the T-34 was forgiving enough to let raw soldiers fight, and that mattered in a war where millions of lives were thrown into the fire. The T-34 didn't stay frozen in time. As German armor improved, the Soviets upgraded. By 1943, the 76.2mm gun was struggling against Tigers and Panthers. The answer was the T-34/85, with thicker armor and an 85mm cannon powerful enough to punch through German heavy tanks. This version became the backbone of the Red Army all the way to Berlin. Veterans recalled the relief of finally being able to face a Tiger head-on and have a chance of winning. The T-34 didn't just win battles, it set the standard for tank design worldwide. Its ideas, sloped armor, wide tracks, diesel engines influenced every modern tank that followed. After World War II, thousands of T-34s were exported. They fought in Korea, where American troops were shocked to face them. They rolled across the Middle East, from Egypt to Syria, and even into Africa and Asia. In some places, T-34s remained in service well into the 1990s. It's hard to think of another World War II machine with such a long-lasting impact. To truly understand why the T-34 was the tank that won the war, compare it with its opponents. German tanks were powerful but fragile. The T-34 was simple but reliable. German industry built in quality but in low numbers. Soviet industry built in quantity with good enough quality. The Germans produced around 1,300 Tigers. The Soviets built over 57,000 T-34s. That number alone tells the story. As one German general admitted, our panzers were superior 1-to-1, but there were never enough. Against the T-34, we were simply outnumbered, outlasted, and overwhelmed. At Kursk, one Soviet commander remembered patching together his tanks all night, welding armor and swapping parts by lantern light. At dawn, his battalion rolled out, battered but ready. Across the field, half the German Panthers were still broken down. The T-34s charged, and for everyone knocked out, 2 more pressed forward. It was brutal, costly, and chaotic, but it worked. By the end of the battle, the German offensive had failed. The tide of the war turned, and the road to Berlin was open. The T-34 wasn't the best tank in every category. It wasn't the fastest, the heaviest, or the most high-tech. What made it great was balance. It was good enough at everything, cheap enough to build in mass, and simple enough to keep running in the worst conditions imaginable. It gave the Red Army a tool that could match German quality with Soviet quantity, and that balance helped break the back of the Wehrmacht. So when we say the T-34 was the tank that won World War II, it isn't just a phrase. It's the story of a machine born in desperation, forged in steel, and proven on battlefields from Moscow to Berlin. This is the story of how the T-34 became the tank that won the Second World War.